Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Tea Time, brought to you by Little Dagger Aesthetics, aka me, aka Michelle. Hello. If you haven't heard any of the other episodes yet, please go back, listen to them. Or not, because they're pretty long, and yeah, totally up to you. Anyway, my name's Michelle. I'm a super cool person. I super hope. My pronouns are she, they, and I have today with me a couple of regulars that y'all already know, and a new guest. So, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, we can go down the line starting with Mika and followed by Siren and Sunny.
All right, yeah. Hi, I am Mikan back on this podcast. My pronouns are she, her, as usual. And a cool fact is that my cat enjoys smashing her head against mine when I just wake up in the morning.
Oh,
Hi everyone, I'm Siren. My pronouns are she, her. If they change, I will let you know. Something cool about me, I just started working as a lifeguard again this summer, so praise for me that I don't die while working. Thank you.
hey.
Hey, Sunny here, she, her. Yeah, also a cat mom here. Definitely spend more time with my cat than I do with people. It's the life.
Cat moms are going to rule the world one day. Like, I don't get me wrong, I still want a dog, I still do, but I love my cat so much. I would literally do anything for him, and he doesn't even give me attention for like 99% of the day. I feel that cat moms are the best. Um, I want to give also a little trigger warning, content warning, for this episode because we are going to be discussing mental health. It includes the bias against Black and Indigenous people of color and the alphabet mafia. Um, but mental health discussions can get a little deeper and a little dark sometimes, and just in general, little content warning. We might dive into some pretty rough stuff. Hopefully though, we will all come out of this okay, and we are all mentally supporting each other and emotionally supporting each other, so we're gonna be fine. Anyway, let's get started on to the first question. So, the first question is, how informed do you believe you are when it comes to mental health? Do you regularly educate yourself and keep up to date with the mental health community? And again, before I started this call, I did say you can answer in the order that we have on the Discord server. But if anyone wants to go first, feel free to jump in, all that. Anyways.
I'll head first again to keep the order for now. Um, so I'd say I probably have average knowledge in mental health. Like most of my knowledge and like information or like misinformation that I've been trying to kick out came from either like close friends or like my own legitimate Google researches. Because personally, like my family or like the environment I grew up in was very like conservative and did not speak a word about mental health. That thing, you're supposed to suppress it deep down and just leave it there. So that's how I grew up. So yeah, I just think in terms of information, like it's very informal, mostly experiences, mostly just people telling these things. I don't think I regularly keep like myself up to date with information. Usually it's just kind of like once or twice a year. I mean, just kind of like reading a report or like I'm doing like volunteer work. So I get my information from there. But yeah, I think that's about it. As a student, when we used to have the club, that would be where I got most of my information because we had to get information to be the club. we had to represent, so but yeah, now as an employee, it's more like since I'm the at least the only one in my kind of area that wants to actively talk about it, I'm the one kind of giving out the TED Talks. So it's me kind of finding and scavenging for information. I
Fair.
think that's it. Yeah.
For myself, honestly, I think I have much better than average because, my degree is in psychology. So I have to constantly be up to date with the new mental health disorders that appear and the different symptoms that may, change because, it's a spectrum. All mental health disorders are a spectrum, right? And I try to keep myself up to date always because, it's part of my field. I have to ensure that although I just graduated, when I do have clients because I am trying to be a child and youth worker after some more schooling. I got to make sure I got all the right information for my clients, right? Especially for children because you know mental health disorders are hard enough for adults, but mixing it with children can be very difficult because especially depending on the life stage that they're at, they may not be able to fully articulate what is going on inside their head, right? So being able to understand what's going on and explain for them and being absolutely up to date to the best degree that I possibly can, I think is super important. And even for people who aren't necessarily in the field either, right? Mental health is important. It's just as important, if not more important, than other health related issues, right?
Mm.
So everyone should always do their best to try and keep themselves informed in any way and capacity that they can.
Yeah, so also psych degree here. So I have an honors BA in psychology. Um,
Nice, yay!
yeah. Oh my gosh, I love psychology. Absolutely love it. Um, so, I know some pretty good stuff, but in terms of keeping myself up to date, I definitely head more in towards the nerdy scientific journal articles that I read for fun. Um, because I just enjoy learning about that sort of thing, but also socially, my community, they know that I have some basic education in psychology, and so they often come to me for, general life advice or to learn a little bit more about psych stuff. And so I think it's, I take that responsibility of keeping up to date on information very seriously because I know that people, you know, listen to me. And mental health affects everybody. So yeah, it's a good thing to, even if you're just just Googling stuff, knowing that it's a reliable source. I think that's great just to keep up to date with what's going on.
For sure. Um, I like all your answers. I'm like, I think I'm somewhere in the middle of all of you because I believe I'm pretty thoroughly informed, but 90% of it is from experience rather than learning and reading in a classroom setting or through a professional setting. Um, so it's kind of like, street smart versus book smart. And when it comes to mental health, I'm more street smart. And regularly educating, keeping up to date. I volunteer a lot. Well, at least I used to. Quarantine has really, quarantine has been a bitch about everything I want to do in life because everything that I want to do in life involves being outside in the world, in a community. So volunteering before, I guess, would keep me up to date because there would be so many different events going on. There'd be so many different articles coming out every day, just a bunch of research studies and all that I had to be kept up to date because I had to know what I was talking about when I was volunteering. I definitely have been slacking a little bit on reading some of these, but I'll get back into it. Quarantine has killed my motivation and everything dear to me. But it's all good. Anyway, let's go on to the second question or like group of questions. It is, have you or anyone you know been diagnosed with a mental illness? How did it affect you or their quality of life? Your or their quality of life. Were any ways it affected the quality of life due to the fact that you or they are a Black and Indigenous people I can't speak, Black Indigenous person of color, or Alphabet Mafia member. So let me know.
All right, I'll start off again. Not a strong answer, but I'll start off. Um, so this is like a good representation of the systems of support we have because almost every person had, at least like that I know or that I'm close enough to for them to share that information, has been diagnosed at least formally with a mental illness. I, like myself, haven't really accessed that system, so I have no formal anything. But I think like just for my friends, I get like very vicariously emotional when someone like close to me is going through a tough time or it's suffering from any form of mental illness. But I don't know. I just get really vicariously, and that's why I'm kind of thinking slow right now, like just bringing in those little memories. I think their quality of life has definitely changed, especially due to the routines. Everything kind of changes, especially from what I know when you're formally at least diagnosed. So you need, like, for example, the extra forms of social supports, medical support, and kind of all the challenges on top of your current struggles, whatever they may be, with one's own mental health. I can't speak for them exactly because I'm talking from a perspective from someone who's been spoken to. But in my experiences on the informal side, like with my emotional struggles when it comes to whatever is going on, it's a very terrible and like sometimes a chronic feeling. So it's very difficult to manage, especially if you're like working or trying to find work or trying to get back into a routine, and you really have to like almost adjust what's been your norm for however long before. It hasn't really affected me personally in terms of layering the BIPOC or Alphabet Mafia on top of that, just because even though I am very mixed, personally I am white passing, so a lot of the time I can kind of skip over a lot of the barriers that would present to others. But for others, I don't think I've heard precise stories because, again, the stigma and the kind of barriers that come with being BIPOC or LGBTQ plus is always like, unless it's a very intense person, it's always like inferred or like subtle. It's like systemic, so it kind of blocks you without telling you it's blocking you. Those are my perspectives, but again, it's just from hearing and my little stories.
Honestly, so this is gonna sound weird because I'm gonna be talking about human, but
Yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah, I guess this is gonna be a little weird, but yeah. So the person that's been diagnosed with a mental health illness that I knew most of my life is Mitch, my best friend, since we were since elementary, over 10 years ago now.
It's me.
And the thing is, it definitely, it broadened my, I guess, scope of what people experience, especially because we were so young, right? Like people, I mean, we were just kids, right? A lot of kids, their first thing isn't really thinking about mental health, and unless, they also have a diagnosis themselves, or say a parent does, or a friend does, or a sibling does, right? Most things kids think about is, when it's recess, gotta do homework. right? But for me personally, I had to kind of cope in a way where I had to learn empathy very quickly because, you know, unfortunately, uh, your mental health, Mitch, especially in elementary slash high school, it wasn't the best, right? Because, you had to go through a lot by yourself, you know.
Oh yeah, big oofs, big sads.
Ah, yeah, I know. So in my part, trying to help you, I had to learn the signs, right? To make sure that, at the end of the day, the trigger warning, I guess, making sure that you were safe from, I guess, external factors, and also you have to be safe from yourself.
Mhm.
So learning your signs was a big part of my life, and I guess it's not I guess, but it has helped shape who I am and I guess in a positive way, because now I'm able to, be more sensitive to others with mental health disorders, and, being aware of when certain things may not seem as they are. But definitely how it affected your life as a woman of color, you know, this might seem like the stereotypical thing, but most, um, traditionalist families, right? Like Mikan said, no one talks about mental health, right? Like mental health doesn't exist. So, and especially, you know, when you're suffering from extreme uh mental health disorders, and being told that you can't express yourself, it makes it really hard. But that's more of an internal kind of um way you've been affected as a woman of color. But
Mhm.
definitely, I think, unfortunately, you couldn't get the resources you could have, right? And
Mhm.
this may be due to the fact that, um, you're a woman of color, but I also just think the mental health um, resources in our schools were absolutely crap, absolute garbage. So, it could be because, you know, we're women of color. It could just be the fact that the resources were horrible. But either way, it just made things a lot harder. And definitely being, part of the BIPOC and LGBTQ plus community does not, it's already hard to get resources as it is. But being in those communities just makes it way, way harder than it has to be. So that's kind of
Mhm.
my experience with it.
Yeah, so for me, I haven't been formally diagnosed, but I'm very mentally ill. Um, for, I don't know how long it's been, 7 or 8 years, I've been dealing with stuff. Um, started off where that good old depression hit, and then, the panic attacks came along, and then some
Mhm.
sweet, sweet general anxiety, and then the social anxiety, and then the trauma, and the PTSD, and the agoraphobia. It's a whole collection. And it has really affected my quality of life. Like a big part of mental illness, so far as diagnosing a mental disorder, is that it really affects your ability to function on a daily basis. And I can say without a doubt that is how my life has been. School, getting to class, to my friendships, being social. I mean, Michelle knows how many times I've wanted to hang out and then been like, I'm so sorry. I'm like way too anxious to leave my apartment right now. And they've just been incredibly understanding. And Siren, I mean, it sounds like you're just a wonderful friend. And, having friends that are supportive like that and understanding, it just makes the world of difference. It really, really does.
Thank
Because,
you.
Mhm.
no, yeah, of course, no matter, how your life is affected, like not being able to do stuff or participate in anything. Just having a community that loves you and supports you regardless, it really does change everything. So yeah, that's my experience. Yeah.
I feel that. Honestly, I'm gonna tell you right now, I will never be upset if like people can't make it to plans, especially for like valid reasons. Um, Sometimes I'll get annoyed like if someone doesn't tell me that they can't make it 4 times in a row the day of. Like that will annoy me. But like in general, I think like especially you, Sunny, like you've texted me every time, or like if you had to tell me after, I would just be like, yeah, like if you need anything, let me know, because you're not a flaky person. That's exactly what it is. You're not a flaky person. You're just like communicating, but there are some sad times, and that's totally understandable.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the guilt that comes with that is huge. And so, yeah, just having friends like you that are so understanding, even when I've like had a blank panic and been unable to message until after, it just means a lot that, you have people that understand where you're coming from and don't interpret you as being flaky, but know that it's something more.
Yeah. Ooh, like I stared at this question the entire time that y'all were talking. I swear I was paying attention, but I was looking at it and I was like, I literally, this is so funny. I was never one to talk about mental health, especially when it came to me, until like 7th grade. And even after that, I talked to everyone else about their mental health, and I never wanted to talk about mine. I would talk to Siren, and that was it. I would talk to like the boy I was dating at the time, and Siren would understand a lot better than that motherfucker. So I talked to like no one, and then I just one day was like, you know what? If I am gonna be an advocate, like I have to start talking about myself too, because it helps people and it also helps me deal with my trauma. Like talking about it in a public sense might not help everyone, but for me it works. So yeah. I have been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder. Yeah, it's just the beautiful trio. It has affected my quality of life in a sense where I live in extremes. I don't know what a gray area is, and no matter how much I try to tell myself that there is one, I can't seem to pick it up. I've been trying to get better with it in the recent months, or even like a 2-year span. But it's hard. It's hard once you've adapted to extremes. I am either, I'm going through a manic episode and I am just bouncing off the walls, doing chores, cleaning my house until there's no speck of dust. I'm doing everything that I need for my business, for whatever. And then on the other hand, which is exactly what I've experienced the most of during quarantine, is my depressive episodes where I just cannot do anything. It affected me a lot in the ways that were like education. I deadass dropped out of school even though I was doing well. Just because my mental health said no. And then I recently actually, I decided to get back into the workforce. I applied. I got 2 jobs in a row, and I had to quit them before I even started because I had anxiety attacks on the way to the jobs. Josh, if you're listening, I'm still sorry. I know he's not mad at me, but I'm still saying sorry because I deadass quit a job that he like basically got me. A lot of this did include being affected as like a person of color. I've definitely seen situations where like I got my diagnosis in first year of university, even though I had reached out and tried to get one before. I was not really cared for the same way that white people in my community were cared for, and I could see it clearly at the hospitals. And being bisexual, honestly, talking to any psychiatrist that should not be a psychiatrist is the most annoying thing, because people just like invalidate you, and if they're homophobic, therefore they shouldn't be in their profession. They're like, "Oh, you have issues pertaining to like your sexual orientation or sexuality." Well, I don't actually care because that stuff is gross. And it's like, bro, that shit gets me so heated. Oof. Big oof. It's my life has definitely been affected by those two factors, and it sucks because it shouldn't. But yeah. We shall go on to the next question. This is, what biases do you see in the mental health or healthcare community against BIPOC and LGBTQ plus persons?
I think I'm just gonna pass this one off because, like I said before, I don't have too much knowledge on this topic.
No worries.
That's fair. Actually, I have a whole ass rant I want to go on. I might end up taking both Mikon's and my time.
Take it away.
So, okay. Sunny probably knows this as well. So, in psychology, we are taught, and I guess more specifically, when you get more, when you start to narrow your degree, like say, for example, if you want to become a social worker or a therapist or whatever, you gotta, especially if you're going to be taking on clients, you got to learn about abuse, right? Especially among children. So the thing is, you learn certain signs, or even in just cases where there isn't abuse, just general signs of different mental health disorders, right? You learn there's certain signs that show up. So I'm going to go back to abuse for a second. You learn that, say, for example, if you're a social worker, and you go to a household, you have to say child services calls, and you gotta check out a home, see if there's signs of abuse, right? You step into the home, and what the textbook way teaching you, they tell you that if you see neglect, for example, like spoiled milk, or the house is messy, the fridge isn't stocked, whatever, there may be signs of abuse. But the problem with this is that these samples are taken in primarily white, industrialized, rich, democratic homes, right? But the thing is, in more traditionalist families, for example, like myself, my background, I'm half Indian. And also, I know other traditionalist families can agree with me with this. The thing is, we keep our homes a particular way, right? Like we keep the fridge stocked. We keep, whatever. Like the thing is, the problem with this is that you can't apply these scenarios to immigrants and on not Western families. Because just because, say you go into a Asian household, right, and you're trying to look for signs of abuse, just because the fridge isn't stocked, or the child may not have bruises on them, right, doesn't mean that there isn't abuse occurring in that home, right? And this is the problem, because you're applying these stats to different types of livelihoods, traditions. Like, it just doesn't work, and then you end up missing cases for children where they could have been taken care of, they could have been saved, but because we're taught a certain way, right, we miss it. And that's the problem, because these poor BIPOC children, right, are stuck in their homes because a social worker went over and said, there wasn't spoiled milk in the fridge. That means there's no abuse occurring. right?
Mhm.
That's kind of my rant. I don't know if that was coherent or not. It's something that's been on my mind for so long. And also this, again, like I said, this doesn't just occur for abuse. You know, there are courses at my university. There's a really great course. It's called Cultural Psychology, where you learn about psychological phenomenons that occur in different societies that
Mhm.
we don't or we don't hear about, or even other mental disorders that we don't hear about because they're not westernized. Anyway,
Mhm.
that's my rant. I could go on forever about that.
I mean, I agree with your rant. I remember when people would say to me, for context, I've mentioned this in other episodes probably, but my family's not good. um that like biggest understatement, but literally so many people, especially adults that I tried to confide in as I was growing up, would tell me that I was okay, or my family seemed like the perfect family, or specifically my mom is such a nice person. Because whenever anyone would come over, there would be food on the table. We literally, Siren knows this, we had a snack closet full of snacks that like my friends could just go into and take snacks home from. Or like if people came over a party, all people will know this, like especially Asian mothers will send you home with bags of food from every time that you go over. And people just like, because they're so used to, oh, the general signs of neglect that I've learned are these, they don't see any of this as like a problem, because they're like, oh, you're totally fine, like your parents are so nice. Like their image is great. They have a great reputation. Your house is stocked. You have so much food and so many things to be thankful for. And it really does take away from the kid or the person that is just like, please help me. Dear God, there are so many things happening. That shit got me. Ooh, heated. Anyway, Sunny, take it away.
No, that's thanks for sharing. Just one quick thing to add on to research wise, like Siren was saying, there's a massive bias in mental health research, both with using like sampling issues with using white people only, or having a non-representative sample. It's a huge issue in research. Also in sex research, the heteronormative standards are like it's a huge issue. Non-representative and biased research that doesn't respect cultural differences. I think in recent years it's turned around a little bit. There's at least a lot more awareness of these issues. But it's still important because, everybody needs to be able to, have scientific research that they can learn from, that can apply to themselves. And it's just such a shame, when this bias is just so present. Yeah, it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, yeah. There's so many. I don't even know, like biases against people of color, especially Black people, and that really hurts my heart too, because I've always said, I understand that I have less privilege than white people, and I don't think I've ever been ignorant towards people that are darker than me, including, other Asians, Black people, Indian people, all that, right? But it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I started realizing it's not that white people are above and then all of us are at the same level below, or it's like, um, I'm at a middle level and someone is one level below me. It's literally like white people 10 steps down, I'm there because in the winter, I can be kind of white passing. If I do my makeup just right, I can be kind of white passing. And then like below is like the non-white passing people, and then you go down another 10 steps to where you're like, no one's actually doing anything here to help anyone, is where darker toned people and Black people are. And it's like, I took so long to figure out that there was such a big gap between all of us, and it just keeps on going further and further down, and there's so many issues that nobody is actually talking about. And it's the same thing with LGBTQ plus people, is because so many studies and so many like healthcare, mental health things that people talk about are not actually to people that are not straight. Like, I was reading this with friends a couple of like years ago, where it was some university in the US that did studies on how to make the university a safer place for like LGBT people, and the majority that volunteered for the study because anonymous way, like it was very much like you could be outed. They got a lot of straight people to answer for confused me. I see it happen all the time, where I have straight friends and I have LGBTQ plus people as friends, and the gay community, and I'm just like, hi, I'm not the gays, but I'm bisexual. Why are you asking this random straight white male I am friends with? Like I'm sorry, he has the most privilege in this entire world. Why are you asking him? And it happens all the time, and I just oof. I don't know. It's also it comes down to a rights issue too. Like, I can't get on this big rant. If y'all know what I'm talking about, feel free to express your dismay as well. But everything that was happening with the trans community, just the amount of bias towards the trans community in mental health, healthcare, within the fucking gay community, like, trans people have so much bias against them, it boils my blood. Like,
Oh my god, I know exactly what you're talking about. Jesus Christ, especially, like, obviously there's many different facets that they're struggling with, like, in regards to, but the one thing that I'm seeing the most is healthcare. They can't get proper healthcare. Oh my god, you're just a person trying to live your life. First of all, if we're talking about just America, don't get me wrong, Canada isn't any better, but America's a lot worse when it comes to healthcare. Yeah, at least in Canada, we have what we call universal healthcare to an extent, where most things you can get written off, prescriptions and such. But in the US, my God, prescriptions are so expensive, okay? And this is just for your general, your, like, say, straight white people. They got to struggle with this too. But you're adding this already horrible thing onto trans people, and they can't get access to this already horrible healthcare system. Like, how if a trans person, for example, has diabetes, they have some kind of heart condition, and they have to have a certain medication to ensure that they stay alive, and they're not given that prescription, you're essentially writing them a death wish. You're essentially signing off their death. And that makes me so mad. I like, it's so bad. It's such a corrupt system that it works for the 1%, and I hate it so much. I'm gonna keep ranting about my bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Literally, that's like Ooh, the passion. I feel it. Oh man. Before we start screaming at no one or whoever listens to this, let's go to the next question. Um, this one is something to get mad over too. It is, have you or someone you've known had a bad experience when it comes to treating your or their mental health? Did being a BIPOC or LGBTQ plus person affect it negatively or positively in any way?
Again, I'm gonna pass it off. I think you guys have better stories than I do.
Oh, good.
I have no problem going first, honestly. I have many stories. My God. Okay, so again, this is gonna be a little weird. I'm gonna be talking about you, Mitch. But the thing is, like, I like to mention it's not just Mitch. I have, unfortunately, a lot of people in my life who do have some sort of either diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health disorder, and a lot of times it's undiagnosed because of the stigma around mental health and getting therapy, and yeah, that's a whole other problem. But the focus that I kind of wanted to, or at least the story that I wanted to go with, was with Mitch, or one that I've heard very commonly, where, for example, again, trigger warning, suicide, depression. But a lot of times when someone with a mental health disorder like depression or is suicidal, and they're, they sign into the hospital, they say, I need to be watched, I need to be put on suicide watch, right? They go and they're in their rooms or whatever, and the amount of times I've been told that a nurse has gone up to a nurse, someone who's supposed to care about, the health of these people, of their patients, right? A nurse has gone up to them and looked at them and be like, "Oh, sweetie, like, what do you have to worry about? Like, why are you like, oh God, why are you mentally ill? Like, you're beautiful, or like, your family, I just saw them, they seem to care about you." My God, I hate that. I like that's, and especially, and then that's the, like, the better version of it. The worst version that I've heard is where, say, a BIPOC or LGBTQ plus person has gone and administered themselves to the hospital, and the nurses just treat, like, they scorn them. They look at them like in disgust, like, oh, like, it's just, oh, I hate it. I don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh man. No, it's big mood.
Yeah, I'll just take this opportunity to insert a scream wherever you are listening. If you need to scream right now, I'm screaming internally, because literally with that nurse thing that you were saying, Siren, where they're like, sweetie, you don't need to be feeling like this. Like, you have people that love you. You have a good life. Scream. Yeah. So, unfortunately, there are many stories that I have in terms of bad experiences, both general life experiences and specific ones, generally really struggling to, with the accessibility of psychologists and psychiatrists. Like, it's so incredibly frustrating to not have the opportunity to be diagnosed, especially when it can provide me with opportunities for accessibility services, like in school. You often need to have like formal papers and stuff that have your diagnoses, and it's just a really bad life thing to not have the opportunity for that. And specifically, like, hospital experiences. Again, carrying on that trigger warning with suicidality, like, I've been there, and I've gone to the hospital and said, I'm not safe right now. Like, I need to be around professional people right now because I want to die. And I waited about, 4 or 5 hours, typical. Talked to a a psychiatrist for about 30 minutes, and then they said, if you really need to stay here, like overnight, there's like this bed in the hallway that, like, I guess you could stay on, but like the lights are going to be on, and it's not in an actual room, it's just like in the hallway there. So if you really want to be under like bright lights for the rest of the night, like, I guess you can stay there. Like, that was tone that they were using. And I had come there like, I really need help, and it just feels like there's not any real help being offered, and it's so incredibly frustrating. And it's not just me that has had bad experiences like this going to emergency services. I've had some really close friends that have had repeated experiences going to the hospital because they were, afraid for their lives, and not safe to be alone. And they just were not provided with proper care. Their, feelings were ignored, or they had doctors that treated them with extreme coldness, or nurses that invalidated their experiences. So it's just so frustrating. And, I'm a white person. I read stories, online, especially of Indigenous peoples who go in for mental health, and they're just treated so horribly, treated on the assumptions that, they're alcoholics and that's why they're feeling this way. Stuff like that. Just really terrible experiences. Yeah, internal screaming sums it up.
That really does. The internal screams I have are going off.
I did want to add a little thing before we head off to the next question.
Yeah.
Because I just thought of it. Maybe it's just because it's nighttime and my brain's just a bit slow, but from a Indigenous perspective, I guess, I went to, like, for example, healthcare, like we mentioned before, there's like Western healthcare, and then there's like, some people maybe take the natural path, or they follow some medical practice that they've had in their culture historically. So on the Indigenous side, healthcare is easily accessible if it's not Western. So if you head off, for example, to like an Indigenous healing center, they have quite a few of them, I think, downtown Ottawa. And this was pre-COVID, but it was very accessible to Indigenous peoples. They had activities for kids. They had also, like, if you're going for an appointment, but you're also like taking care of a child. They had like elderly activities. They had healing circles, social activities, depending on the celebration they're having. And I feel like if there's any Indigenous people out there, if you require more of a healing that you feel is more comfortable for you in the Indigenous way, which is just, it's different. If you need that type of community healing, I would definitely recommend checking out that type of community healing center if you haven't heard about it. I haven't heard of any difficulties. I hear it's accessible. I'm not sure exactly about the process because I haven't done it myself. I only went there to visit. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there as my 2 cents.
Thank you for doing that. I like that a lot. Especially since it's about fucking time, but people are finally starting to pay attention to Indigenous issues, and still not at the scope that we should be, but it's finally being talked about, and it's way overdue. So we should have these resources put out. Definitely in the description of this video, well, it is technically a video on YouTube. This episode, I'll be putting in a list of resources, that will be international, US and Canada, and then a little more focused into who I know are primarily my audience, which is Ottawa, Toronto, BC. So yeah. I'm about to make y'all mad before we move on to the next question because I was thinking about this. Bad experiences. So I don't know why. I guess this is because like Siren was talking about like childhood. But it reminded me of facing the bias so early on in my life. So two stories. One, I was in 5th grade. My teacher was a white woman. And I believe, social worker, I honestly never knew what her position was because she was also like a substitute teacher at some point, was also a white lady. In 5th grade, I'm walking to music class. I have looked depressed all day because guess what? I'm depressed. So my 5th grade teacher pulls me aside and she goes, "Hey, before you go into music class, you seem kind of down lately, especially today. What's going on? Do you need to talk to someone?" Which is a good approach, great. You're asking what's up. You're being there for me. But people in this career path or choice or whatever have seen so much that they are completely desensitized, and there is no protocol for renewing people's emotions and making sure that even if they are desensitized, they realize that their patients are not, and they're not just numbers on a sheet of paper or some shit. So she asked me what was wrong. I said I didn't want to talk about it. She said, "No, I am here for you. You have to tell me about it." I'm a scared kid talking to my teacher where this lady is literally telling me, "You have to tell me or you cannot go into music class. You will have to come back to the classroom with me and sit at your desk until you tell me what's wrong." What the fuck? Like, I think about that every now and then and it makes me cringe. Okay, because if I know that you are there for me, but I don't want to talk at the moment, I will eventually come to you when I am ready. I will. Or like, you can continue to let me know that you are there for me. You can't threaten me to tell you what's wrong. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. It's just like family stuff that is weighing on my mind and all that. I'm sad because I don't even think I knew the word depression in 5th grade, but I was like, I'm just super sad over a lot of things to do with my family. This woman, literally, I turned away from her to like open the door to the music room, and she grabbed my arm and said she would not let go until I told her what was wrong. So,
What the fuck?
Yeah. So I tell her that my dad was upset recently and threw a plate at my mom. I'm just exposing my family all over the internet. But anyway, she tells me, "Okay, thank you for telling me this. I'm going to talk to," I was just about to say her name. "I'm going to talk to the social worker person and she will like talk to you later." So she lets go of my arm and she literally like brings me to the back door of the music room and shoves me through the door. And for like half the class, I was sitting in the back of the room crying. Oops. So later that day, I get called down to social worker's office. She sits there and she's like, "What's wrong? Your teacher told me that you said this." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You can trust me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I don't feel safe and I'm sad." And she's like, "Unfortunately, we're gonna have to call an actual outside of school social worker to talk to your dad about what he did." And immediately, I swear, I am like crying, begging her not to call this person because you are about to fuck up my life. Like it is going to get so much worse. And I'm telling her that like I will refuse to go home if she calls. Like I'll run away or whatever. She deadass escorts me to the bus after school and yeets my ass on bus A. Okay, and then The next day, while I'm at school, I get a teacher coming up to me at recess or whatever. It was my 6th grade teacher. She was a dime. She comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, we have been looking for you. There's a phone call for you in the office." It is my dad. He's fucking yelling his ass off while I'm sitting in this office surrounded by like 4 teachers, crying, listening to this. He's like, "You're fucking dead. You're fucking stupid. Like, I can't believe you told this person that I did this or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh shit, like I'm fucked." And then after they witness me on the phone, this is 4 teachers and that social worker. She gets a call the next day from outside social worker, and this lady tells her she has spoken to my dad over the phone. He has stated that he had never done such a thing, and he's just kind of tired because he has 2 kids and has to work full-time hours, so he might have accidentally raised his voice, and he's so sorry, and he would never do it again. He has learned his lesson. And I had this social worker look me in the face and say, "Well, that's that. Don't worry about it. Your parents always want what's best for you. They just get a little stressed sometimes." And then I didn't trust an adult until like 12th grade ever again.
God. I see, like, that's what I was saying. Like, the mental health resources we had at our school, and probably most schools, to be honest, was absolute garbage. Like, in our high school, we had more police than we did mental health workers. I cannot believe the absolute garbage that these people try to. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Mitch. That's horrible.
Yeah. Oh man. You know, I'm still on ACAB, but shout out to Officer Sunny of Basil's, who literally
Is that okay to say his name?
Yeah, it's nothing bad. I'm giving him a shot because he was literally the one cop in my entire life, other than one of my aunts who's a cop. I love you. But he was the one cop that I actually liked because he witnessed me having an anxiety attack. In I think it was 11th grade. And he sat down with me in a stairwell for 2 hours and was like, "If a hall monitor comes and says you have to go to class, it's okay. I will tell them to leave you alone. I will sit here with you until you are okay. I do think, though, that you should talk to a therapist or something. And if you need help getting those resources, I can do my best to help. I'm not well versed, but I will try." And, he was just a solid person. All other cops, though, holy fuck, eat my ass. My God. But yeah.
Fair enough.
Second story is very, very short. Is a trigger warning here, suicide. I tried to off myself in first year, ended up in the hospital. When I was there, some random man who, was he a doctor? Who knows? It was literally a man in a suit that that came up to me in the middle of the mental health ward and said, "Hey, I hear you've been sleeping all day." And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "So there was a study done. I can't remember where it was, but it's basically these sheep, they're not doing so hot. They're stressed or whatever. They gave them some treatments. Half of the sheep slept for 30 days straight. The other sheep ran around and were happy and tried to have fun. By the end of that whole thing, who do you think recovered better?" And I was like, the ones that were active. Are you trying to tell me I should not sleep? And he was like, no, both. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he said, "If I were you, though, I would get out of bed." And I was like, did you not just tell me that story to validate me and say if I needed to stay in bed for the 3 days I've been here, that is okay? And he was like, "Well, technically it is, but in my opinion, it's not." And then he walked away from me. So I don't know who that was. I know he wasn't a patient. So it was someone in the healthcare arena, but I don't know. Just bad experiences all around.
I put down my knitting at that story. Let me tell you, if you could see my face right now, I don't know how that happened. Like sheep? What? Excuse me? I'm so sorry that happened. I'm not gonna sleep tonight. I'm too worked up.
Oh no. We'll have a decompress session after this. But yeah, no, it was so random. Unfortunately, that does bring us to the hour mark. So I think I will cut it off at that question, but I don't want to leave it on a bad note. So I'm gonna have a whole new question introduced to be our makeshift last one, which is just generally give a piece of advice or loving remark about mental health or to someone out there who happens to stumble upon this really random podcast. Give them some advice or encouraging words or whatever you want to tell them, because I know it won't be something bad.
If I'm being honest, I spaced out for the past minute. What's happening?
If you would like to give some encouraging words or advice to someone struggling with their mental health, just because we're a bit over the time, and we might do a part 2 of this actually, because I do want to talk more about mental health, and get to those last questions. But for now, we gotta do a little makeshifty.
Got you. All right. So for all of those struggling with their mental health, these systems suck. But for now, just use whatever resources you can. I did mention this, Michi, I'm not sure how long back. But every day that you wake up, that you get out of bed, is a day you've done something so productive, no matter how small it is. Just waking up, opening your eyes. And I know it's going to be hard for some people, especially now with everything being virtual, and it's hard to see people in person, but you are doing amazing.
Mine's going to be a little bittersweet, to be honest, but that's usually how I approach mental health, honestly. What I wanted to say to everyone that's listening and to the people that are also in this podcast, if you are struggling with a mental health disorder, unfortunately, the thing is, most likely you will have that for the rest of your life. It's not like, taking some SRIs for, major depressive disorder or taking a Xanax for anxiety. It's going to miraculously get rid of, your mental health disorders. That's just not how it is. But with the right treatment and with the proper people in your life, you will learn to manage it. And that is the absolute best thing that you could possibly have happen for yourself, because it does make it easier. And honestly, living with certain mental health disorders, once you learn to find the right coping mechanisms, you could even learn how to make your mental health disorder work for you. Right? You're unique. You're beautiful. You will learn to find these, you will learn to recognize that you are an amazing person, even if the whole world and yourself feels like they're against you. So I hope everyone who's listening has a wonderful day. Yeah, that's it.
Oh.
Yeah, I would love to send out my love to all the listeners, and just know that there are thousands of strangers all around the world that don't know you but are cheering you on. Whatever your experience is right now, your life has value and you are loved. And check out Semicolon Project. If you want something to do, it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have weird advice. I don't know how to phrase it. Another little trigger warning, because I'm gonna go a little with this. I just want to focus on progress for my advice, which is there's no such thing as no progress, even if you feel like you're not getting anywhere. Because Mikan just reminded me, I focus a lot on productivity. I do believe that I waste days if I don't do anything, or at least my definition of not doing anything. Because I don't count self-care at all whenever I have a day that I lay in bed, take a bath, do my nails. I don't count it as a day that is productive, and I get mad at myself, and I just don't want anyone to feel like that. I am working on it, and I am getting to the point where I am realizing I need to let myself be okay with days like that, because self-care is productive. And putting yourself forward in the smallest way, which is just waking up and taking a breath, is progress. And it's so hard to learn that. It is so hard to remind yourself of that. And everything just feels like it sucks if you don't see immediate progress, but you can't demand that of yourself. You would never demand it of another person, so it doesn't make sense to do it to yourself. You gotta treat yourself like you would your best friend. And that includes coping mechanisms. It includes anything that you need as a coping mechanism is valid. I'm not about to advocate for becoming addicted to certain things or whatnot, but I have seen way too many people get mad at people for coping. I've had people that I thought were friends get mad at me because they've seen cuts on my arms and stuff like that. Literally, someone that I thought was a friend yelled at me on a public bus. Shout out. Anyway, let yourself do things. Let yourself understand what works for you. Even if in the moment you are harming yourself, sometimes, this is really going to sound controversial, but sometimes that's okay. It should never be your goal, but I have had days where I have needed some sort of release, and then for the next 3 days, I have put together a plan to ask for help. And just that one moment of, this is okay, has helped me immensely. Please, everyone out there, don't try to kill yourselves, but little things, you need to smoke a joint, you need to take a shot, you need a just one thing. Don't let yourself be guilty over it, because it's okay. We are not perfect human beings. We are never going to be perfect human beings. You are allowed to mess up and not feel guilty, as long as you are not trying to hurt yourself intentionally and not forgiving yourself after for it, or hurting someone else intentionally, because we're all just struggling human beings and we all need to treat ourselves and everyone else kindly. Other than that, any final statements for the episode? Shoot your shot with my audience.
Don't forget to drink some water if you haven't, and specifically to those of you who are going to say, I had ice cubes in my iced coffee. That is not consuming water. Go drink some water.
I'm in this sentence and I don't like it. Yeah. Yeah, drink some water, drink some tea, take care of yourselves. Make an account on the Little Dagger Aesthetics website, because the shop will probably be back open by the time this releases. I don't know when I'm releasing this because my brain is scattered. Otherwise, I love you all. You are my little children, and that's even more special than real children, because I will never actually have real children. All right. See y'all later.